welcome to this third and final module on the topic of on-farm grain processing. My name is Amy. I'm an organic grain farmer and grain miller from Manitoba. This is the third and final module on the topic of adding grain processing to your farm. And today we'll be diving into the much dreaded subject of marketing. You've grown an incredible crop. You've developed a facility, infrastructure, financial plans, processing equipment, operations flow, workplace safety plans, packaging for a beautiful product. You've done all the work, and now it's sitting on the store shelf. It's sitting on your market table, or even worse, on a storage shelf in your mill, and it's not going anywhere. You need to get it into the hands of customers. The structure of capitalism means that there is competition for each product, and likely multiple businesses offering the same or similar product even in your geographic area. And in a North American context of excess and comparative wealth, no one's starving without your food product. It's unlikely that customers will be tripping over their feet to get to your product, so you're going to have to do that work too. So, what is marketing? Who is it targeted at? What formats and platforms can it take? How do you create each of those platforms? What formats are best suited to each different type of customer? These are some of the questions that we'll be addressing over the course of this presentation, so welcome here. Marketing certainly gets a bad rap. As farmers, we love growing food, planting, tending, developing, and creating the crops and products that can feed the world. There is tangible and real value to what we do. Marketing, on the other hand, can feel insincere. It can feel pushy or unnecessary, and many of us simply don't like putting ourselves out there in that way. It's easier, however, to overcome some of these negative connotations around selling yourself or marketing if you consider marketing simply as all of the forms of communication that take place prior to a sale. Marketing is simply communication. And clearly, getting information about your products to a potential customer is critical. So I've divided these different areas of communication into roughly 4 different categories. The first category in the top left is the functional information that you need to communicate about your product. And a lot of this we've covered through aspects of packaging and basic product design. This is telling the world what your product is, how it was grown, what it tastes like, who should eat it, what nutritional benefits it may offer, the pricing, and how to go about purchasing it. The information that someone might need to differentiate your product from the crowd of similar products out there. So this is a very functional level, and there's a lot of different formats that this may take, from sell sheets to packaging design to trade shows. But this is one category, just getting that functional information out to people. The next broad category is communicating with your consumer. And your consumer is different than your customer, or may be different. The consumer is the person who will be using your product at the end. So this is the person who eats at a restaurant when your product was used by the chefs to create a menu item. Or it might be the teenager who grabs something from the pantry after the product has already been purchased. Or it may be the person who also makes the purchase as well and purchases the product from you may also be your end consumer. But the consumer is the person who actually eats the product in the end. Food products in particular have a lot of work to do to build trust and to build rapport with their consumers. Food products, by the very nature of being food, require a lot of trust. It's something that we're going to be ingesting and putting in our bodies. So there's the really base level of communicating some of the really functional information. Is this product safe? Is it going to be okay to eat? After you know that it's safe and okay, is it going to be healthy? Is it going to be good for you to eat? Is it going to offer certain nutritional benefits? Is it desirable to eat? Are you going to enjoy eating it? Is it going to be tasty and something that gives you energy? And is it something that you're going to want to eat again? And then does it have good value? If you're spreading out your grocery budget for the week or for the month, is this something that's a worthwhile purchase to be able to spread out that food budget? Now, in most marketing channels as well, you're not going to be communicating directly with that end consumer. In a lot of instances, there will be people in between you and that end consumer, and those people in between are your customers. In many cases, this will be store owners, store managers, chefs, distribution companies. These are some of the individuals who will be purchasing your product, but they're not going to be the end user in many cases. If you're presenting your product to a store manager, they're going to care that your product is safe only in as much as your end consumer cares that it's safe. They likely will never eat your product. They're going to, if you give them a sample, that sample will stay in its unwrinkled, unopened format. And they're going to care more about what it looks like than what the actual end goal is. But they do care that your product is going to fit into their own business model. Your product is going to play a role in their own business being successful and being profitable. And so they care about those aspects of your product that are going to contribute to their own business functioning, which is a very different goal than the consumers who want to know that it's going to make them healthy and give them energy to sustain them throughout the day. So there's two different types of things that you need to communicate with your consumers and with your customers, and we'll talk about that in more detail later on. The fourth broad category then is communication from your consumers and from your customers. If we're thinking about marketing as being communication, it becomes really clear that communication is never just a one-way street. In order for you to be successful at marketing your product, you're going to need to set up channels and venues for your consumers and your customers to communicate back with you, for you to be able to take feedback, even when that feedback looks like criticism, and to be able to take that feedback from a whole number of level of different people, from your consumers, the end users, from your store managers, even from your delivery drivers and the shelf stockers. They're all going to have input and feedback on your product. And if you can take criticism from shelf stockers about why your package is falling over, or they don't know where to place it on the shelf, or some aspect about the secondary packaging, the cases that you have it packed in, if you can take that feedback from all the different people that you work with, your consumers and your customers and everyone else along the value chain, that's going to help you to do a much better job in running your business and making decisions along the way that will help your end consumer to get the product into their shelf, into their pantry. So as you consider how to be structuring your food business, or maybe you're deep into it already, but you're looking at different ways to expand and trying to figure out what sales channels will work best for your product, it's quite possible that you're going to be shying away from working with distributors, retailers, or any other venue that distance you from your end consumer. And it's true, these things can be risky. Each extra step that you add in each of your sales channels can be viewed as barriers, and they can be barriers. Information about your product can get lost or misunderstood or just missing at each step. But effective marketing is a really important step to help to draw each of these different levels in the food distribution chain, to draw these people into your team. And that can help you to extend your reach and to sell your product to more consumers. So whether you're selling at a farmer's market or you're selling at retail or at food service, you're always going to have multiple levels of people to communicate with. Communication to each level is going to look different. It's going to take different forms and convey sometimes entirely different information. As a general rule, for all the intermediate steps, which I'm showing here in the white rectangles, these are some of the intermediate steps that the people who can stand between you and your end consumer, or can help to draw the end consumer in. So all of these kind of intermediate steps. In general, the most important thing that you're going to ask from them, from the delivery drivers or the line cooks, is to care about you as a person. Even if they don't know anything about your product, if they care about you and they want you to be able to succeed, they're going to do a lot to be able to help your product. Even if they don't know your product at all, they don't understand the different features of it, if they care about you, they're going to help it to arrive in good shape and on time if they're a delivery driver. And they care if you're hurt by the product not arriving on time. If they care about your product too, and they know all the pertinent information about it, that's a bonus. It can certainly help. And if they care about you and they care about your product, then you've got a fully functional member of your marketing team. Alternatively, so you want all these the people in the white boxes to care primarily about you and then to know about your product as a bonus. But on the flip side, if the end consumer in the bottom yellow boxes here, if those end consumers follow every move you make on Instagram, they know when you're planting your fields and when you're rotating your livestock. They love your approach to farming. They love watching all of your Instagram stories. They care deeply about you, but if they don't care about your product or they can't access it, all of that marketing effort is entirely irrelevant. You're not going to see good sales, even if you have a huge online fan club. So for that end consumer, the most important thing that they need to know is about the product. It's a bonus if they know about you and if they care about you, but that's the bonus part that helps to increase sales, but doesn't drive them at the beginning. So the first category here, then at farmers markets, this is probably the most direct route to a consumer, but you still do have additional people along the way who are part of that team that can help you to draw more people into your market booth. So you have your market coordinators, and there might be different coordinators who do social media promotion, people who will even choose your table placement. So whether you're close to the beginning or the end of the circuit that people will take around the market, whether you're positioned next to a similar product or next to someone who's a real showstopper and everyone's watching them juggle and they don't care to stop by your table. All of these things will play a role in helping or not helping you to reach your customers. And then in the end consumer, a lot of the information that you're going to be getting to that end consumer is in a spoken or potentially a visual form through how you set up your booth. But this can be, again, most helpful if you're a really great spoken communicator. On the retail level, you've got a number of different people as part of your team. So you might be getting your product to a distributor first, and then that distributor needs to communicate information to their sales rep. Those sales reps are going to communicate information to store managers, sometimes through the delivery drivers and sometimes directly. And then store managers will need to communicate information to inventory managers and shelf stockers along the way. So for example, if you have a sales price, you've decided that for the month of July, you're going to be offering your product at 20% off, but only your distributor knows about it. They're going to take your product at a sales price, but they may not even pass it along to a store manager. If you have a dysfunctional team, your sales price benefit is going to end at the distributor level. They may not pass on the information to the stores that, hey, there's this really great promotion offered, and if they're not promoting your product, stores might not even order during that promotion. So you need to have your distributors working on your team to communicate that sale information to the store managers. And next along the line, if the store manager knows that there's a sale and they've placed an order and they've got product on the shelf, but they forgot to tell the inventory manager to change the price marker on the shelf, then there's another barrier along the way and your consumer still doesn't know about your sale. So you need to have your store manager effectively communicate to your inventory manager to be able to change the pricing. In a highly functioning team, those store managers and the inventory managers are going to know about your sale and not only know about it and communicate it, they're going to use that as an opportunity to move your product to maybe a higher value real estate spot in the store. They're going to move your product to an ender or somewhere where that gets a lot more traffic and a lot more attention. And if they're doing that, if they're using your sale, not only knowing about it, communicating it onto the end consumer, but then building on that and moving your product to a better spot in the store to help support you, then you've got a fully functioning team on your retail side. You've got distributors, delivery drivers, store managers, inventory managers, even cashiers helping you to drive sales. In the food service context, the intermediate steps are somewhat similar. You still have potentially distributors and sales reps, delivery drivers, and then you have the restaurant owners, the people who are often making the decision on purchasing and creating a menu. Then you have the chefs and even the line cooks and the servers who are communicating that to the end consumers. So for example, here, if your product has a new feature, maybe you're trying out a new heritage version of your grain crop, and it gives a subtly different flavor or different texture to the end product, the end consumer probably will never realize that. They'll just assume that it's the chef doing a fantastic job of seasoning the dish. But if you have the line cooks and the servers also on board, and they know that it's your unique heritage variety crop that you're using that gives it this unique flavor, then the servers and the hosts at the restaurant are going to be using this information to highlight that feature of the menu item, and they're going to be focusing on your product as they're describing the special of the day. So again, that would be a highly functional team working together to build your sales in a food service context. So I know I'm trying to focus on the communication angle here, but I can't talk about marketing for too long without bringing up the concept of branding. what is your brand image for your farm or for your product. And so the first thing you want to think about then is communicating or deciding what your product's core differentiator is. What is the key features of your product that you want to be emphasizing again and again? So you can't do everything. So you need to focus on a few of the different features, one or two, that you're going to be communicating to your consumers. So is this some specific aspect of the product itself? Is it the crop variety? Is it a nutritive value? Or is it a certain health benefit? Is it a product that enables a certain lifestyle, whether that's convenience or some type of health benefit? Is it the taste itself? Is it the sustainability or some other feature of your farm? And so you need to be thinking very clearly about what it is that you offer that's different than other products, and trying to communicate that in as many different ways as possible. If you try to check all of the boxes, if you want to communicate to your consumers that your product is the healthiest, the most convenient, the tastiest, the most sustainable, your message is going to get lost. And when people do hear your message, it's going to come across as insincere and not believable. And so communicating that focus of your product is going to permeate into all of the other aspects of your business as well. So it's fairly important to think about that fairly early on. If you've chosen sustainability as one of the core messages of your product, this is really important for the material that you choose for your packaging. If you choose a packaging with multiple layers of plastic, it doesn't matter what your name is or what your branding are or how many beautiful images you have of the sustainability of your farm. You're still going to be alienating the people that you most want to reach through your use of multiple layers of plasticking. It's also going to influence what trade shows or community events you participate in, what stores or what restaurants you're selling in. And so communicating and deciding what that focus is really important early on. And then once you have that focus, then you can start to create the brand around telling and explaining that. And so the first part of that is just a product name or a brand name. And so coming up with some type of name that helps to emphasize that key feature that you want to emphasize. Coming up with a logo, some type of a graphic logo, a way of representing that, something that's either integrated into your product name or that stands alone, and other aspects that will be included on your packaging and all types of promotional material. This can even just be the font that you're using, the color scheme that you've chosen, a tagline, maybe a featured image that goes along in addition to your logo. So these are all the different aspects that will help to communicate some of those messages. So a brand image is really about telling your story, helping consumers to identify and to care about you as a producer as well. And this is a huge advantage that you have as doing a product that comes directly from your farm. Large food brands know that it's important in order to ask consumers to care about them, to tell some type of story. And it's fairly common for larger food brands to either to fake a story about their origins or to buy a smaller brand in order to acquire that brand story. It's fairly common to, you're walking down the toothpaste aisle and, oh, look, this toothpaste looks so cool and different. You turn it around and it's owned by, Colgate or something. It's all the same brands, and they know that they're going to be able to grab consumers' interests by having a smaller, unique, and more authentic story to be able to tell. So as an artisanal, farm-based producer, this is one of your key differentiators. You have this advantage right from the beginning that you do have a story to tell. You have a specific place, a specific person, a specific location, and you can start to build the story and help to draw consumers into that story. So the next then is the next important aspect here is to really understand your target consumer. As you've chosen what the focus of your product is, whether it's health or convenience, this will also help to paint an idea of who your target consumer is. And then your branding material should help to relate to them. So the photo that I have on this slide is one that I've used in some of my marketing efforts because I wanted to convey a message that our farm cares about the creepy crawlies. I kind of devised that my target consumer is someone who's, a bird watcher, the eco-conscious greenie. And so I thought this image might really relate to them and help them to understand that my farm also is a farm that cares about the creepy crawlies. But if my end consumer is someone who's really concerned about food safety, maybe they've been grossed out by an infestation of pantry beetles, or maybe it's a chef who's had bad reviews from customers when they had a spider crawling across their table, then using this photo and emphasizing, that there's grasshoppers and bugs on our fields, that might really turn them away. So your marketing efforts may take some risks. In order to draw in certain consumers, you do need to understand that there is the possibility of alienating others. And you want to minimize that alienation, but certainly choose marketing materials that will help to for your end consumers to know who they are, to know that this is a product that I'm supposed to like, and that it's most likely that it's something that they would find useful. So I don't know in the end if using this photo of a grasshopper is a good decision or a bad decision to be able to reach consumers, but it's certainly something to be conscious of, to know your target consumer, speak to them without alienating everyone else along the way. And then finally, consistency. This is important. Your brand image should be worked into all of your marketing efforts, your sell sheets, your website and Instagram stories, trade show brochures, business cards. Jump at every opportunity you have to incorporate your logo, your font, your colors, your image, and the unique feel of your product. Some products take this very, very seriously, and every inch of space on a package is driving home that same message. Kind of a fun example that I just came across the other day was a product that used even the UPC code, just that 2 inches of space on the back of their product where the UPC code is, and using some creative imagery to continue to emphasize their brand image through that UPC code. And there's some really, really fun and engaging ones out there. So people certainly take this very seriously, using being consistent in their brand message. If your message is convenience, driving that home again and again in all the different ways that you can through your branding. Once you've decided on the feature of your product that you're going to be emphasizing through all of your branding, you know your target consumer, you can demonstrate to them that you understand what's valuable to them, then it's time to start working on building and designing the marketing platforms that you're going to be using. So not all sales channels, not all customers are going to need each of these platforms or tools, but I'll look at each of these different marketing materials, where they can be used best, some guidelines to get started for designing each of them. And so the next few slides will dive into some of the details here for things like product packaging and in-store display materials, developing sell sheets for retailers and food service, preparing for demos, doing in-store sampling. This can be either booths at community events or even trade shows, website and social media, how to develop a presence to direct people from Google Ads or using Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever is most popular next week. Looking at print ads, when and how it might be valuable to develop in-store flyers through newspapers or in-store displays. And then finally, I don't want to forget about your personal communication and interactions as well. Although these interactions aren't designed in advance and laid out, they still greatly influence how your customers and your team members view you and your product. This can be emails or conversations in the store aisle with store managers, shelf stockers, or customers. It can be phone calls to schedule deliveries. All of the different communication that makes up the nuts and bolts of actually running a business are also marketing opportunities and opportunities to drive home some of your branding messages. So if you're getting an email from an inventory manager asking when you'll be coming by to restock the shelves, you're not going to attach a snazzy graphic, but your communication with that individual is still an opportunity to draw them into your story. All of these interactions, although they're functional, can also serve to market your product. If your main focus is sustainability, the reply to the inventory manager might be, I'll be coming by to restock on Tuesday because later in the week I'm working to create a conservation plan with our watershed district for the water management on our farm. Continue to bring your featured product elements into focus in every way you can. This is all the different print materials, your website, and every email and conversation is another opportunity to draw people into your story. When you're selling your product in a retail environment, certainly there's no question the product packaging is going to be the single most important way that you're able to market your product. But it's not the only way. The same product with the same package, accessible to the same group of people, can increase or see decreased sales, dramatically influenced through some additional factors, which can all fit into your marketing plan and how you approach different stores and expect sales to fit into that plan. So with packaging design, certainly, We talked about this a lot in the second module, some of the different elements that are required by CFIA, but then how also to fit in different elements of your package design using the material of your product to communicate the shape, the quantity, the colors that you've chosen, your own product logos and branding, the feel of your product and how that's going to speak to the right type of customer, the customer who is targeted to the type of product that you're selling. So certainly that is going to be the primary way of communicating with your customers. But in addition to this, the placement of your product in the store on the shelf probably plays a similarly important role. There's the aesthetics of how a product looks, whether it fits into the right height of the shelf, and whether it's put into the right category. So grocery stores are divided into different sections and categories, and each category will be managed by often a different person whose job is to coordinate all the different products in that particular category. If you're able to get your product into the right category, and there's no definition of what right means, it's going to vary for each product, but that can be a huge boost to sales. In some instances, being placed next to a similar product, being right next to your closest competitor, can be a huge boost to sales, particularly if that competitor product is maybe a national brand that has really good recognition, and if your product is priced, similarly, maybe a little bit higher or potentially even a little bit lower. That can be a huge boost because anyone who's looking for that competitor's product that's already got decades of marketing behind them, they might give your product a second chance. In some situations for different products as well, or different times of year, different criteria, sometimes getting space on the enders or the end caps on the ends of displays might be a significant boost as well. These spots can grab people's attention. Even if they're not walking through all the aisles, they might just grab it. If they're just running into the store to grab bananas and onions and head out, they might see your product on one of those enders. From my experience, I would suggest that impulse items tend to do better on enders, and kind of the pantry staples are often best slotted into where they belong, kind of next to their competition. But this certainly varies from product to product and store to store as well. Some of the aesthetics, the function, and also your categories aren't always the same as well. Some stores will have differences in the categories. Some will just have a baking product section. Some might have an organic baking product section. Some might have specific gluten-free spaces or allergen-free or vegan or vegetarian sections. And so sometimes you might be able to get your product cut into multiple spots in the store. And sometimes you'll have the option, or the store manager will have the option, and they'll make that decision whether they're putting you in the organic section or in the baking section. And as you learn more about different stores, you might be able to make recommendations and suggest where it will do the best. So certainly working with store employees to make sure that product is presented well, it can be your responsibility and sometimes the responsibility of a distributor that you're working with, and a shared responsibility with the store to make sure that any damaged product is pulled off, outdated product is replaced, product that's older but still fine to be sold is pulled to the front to be sold as soon as possible. This work can be done by store employees, but there's a lot of products to manage. So if you're able to cover some of that work as well, it will certainly help to ensure that your product is successful. Price tags and sale pricing is not to be overlooked as well. Sometimes you might offer a sales price and everyone knows about it in the store, but it doesn't make it to the price tag, so the consumers don't know about it yet. So making sure that those price tags are accurate. Sometimes there's the opportunity for a price per gram to be listed on that tag as well, and that can sometimes be really advantageous if you have a product that looks small but actually has a more advantageous pricing than its competitors. If possible, you want your product to be at eye level. That's the most vied for spot in a store. So if a grocery manager is giving you a spot right at 4 feet off the ground, that's certainly going to be an advantage rather than being cut in right next to the floor. One other thing that you can potentially offer to your stores is shelf collars. These are little tags, maybe 4-inch circles or sometimes rectangles, that fit into the retail display space, and they call out some specific feature of your product. So a lot of stores are trying to promote their local products. They're presenting to consumers that they are supporting their local farmers. And so being able to put a little shelf tag that calls out your product as being local is quite common. And sometimes the stores themselves will provide those shelf tags or hangers. And it's just up to you to kind of mention and say, hey, do you have any of those those shelf colors that could be applied to our product. So sometimes those are also available for organic or for an allergy or some other specific feature, and they might be able to help you to promote your product to customers. So another possible option that you can consider for your product is developing display cases that your product sits in. So kind of one of those cardboard or can be wooden crates, some type of display case that you would place your product on. And this allows you some unique placements throughout the store. In some stores, the category rules or the restrictions that store owners are working with for placing products in different places are fairly restrictive. They might have already been determined that Shreddies gets 4 feet of shelf space and it's going to be at 3 feet off the ground. That might be predetermined, set, paid for potentially, and maybe non-negotiable. So you might have a product that fits well into a certain category, but the store may not be allowed to give you shelf space in that particular spot if other products have paid for certain amounts of shelf facing. So getting a display case sometimes will allow your product to be positioned right next to the aisle that it should belong in if there isn't space there. And sometimes it also allows you to have really unique placements that, if it's a product that would fit well with a particular dairy product, maybe having the display case next to that dairy product that it fits well with. And so display cases can allow you to sneak into a store that has fairly rigid layouts. And it also allows you to add additional marketing materials. So signs that call out your product, brochures or recipes that customers can take. Even having video displays is getting more common, where you'll have a video of your product that consumers can watch on the video display as they're going through the store. Ads for in-store flyers are another consideration. If the store that you're working with has regular, either weekly or monthly or just seasonal flyers, considering having a promotion that works into their flyer sequence, and then developing some type of print to put into that flyer can also be a really helpful promotional item. And then finally, my last thought here, when you're working in retail environments, it is critically important to remember that your primary customer is the store itself. The store likely wants you to be successful for you to sell more of your product, but they're balancing other factors as well. Your retailers are likely selling similar products already. Customers are only going to eat breakfast once a day or toast once a day or whatever it is that you're selling. And if the store already has dedicated customers who are shopping there regularly, your product is just dividing up the revenue that they're already bringing in, dividing it between your product and your competitor, and it's adding extra work to the store because they need to find a special spot for it. They need to be contacting you for ordering. So you do need to recognize that there may be a value proposition. You might be offering value to the store, but they're likely doing a lot more work to divide up their own revenue. So you need to recognize that and know that you have to work to bring value to the store, either by increasing sales of that particular category. So saying more people will eat breakfast if we have this product in addition to the Shreddies that you're already selling. Offering something novel that will bring in new customers, solidifying their customer base, helping their consumers to be more dedicated to their store, or providing some other benefits. In the current climate, having local products in a store certainly gives a bit of street cred. And so stores will see value in that. If customers see local products in their store, they give greater value to the store overall and to the other products, even the non-local ones in the store. So when you're trying to keep your customer, the store itself, happy, consider that good communication, timely deliveries, managing your own inventory, pulling product, replacing damaged or outdated product. These are all things that your consumer will never see, but when a store is happy with you, they're going to start leading customers to your product as well and working effectively on your own sales team. So you might have the ideal spot in mind for your product. You can suggest that placement. You can offer displays to make that possible. But if the store moves your product to a dusty corner next to the frozen peas, then in the end, that is their call. They're your customer and they have the final call. As you learn to navigate your relationship with that store and you cultivate a team of people who want your product to succeed, then the rest will start to fall into place as well. So again, speaking in retail environments, although this also is applicable somewhat to food service or to restaurants and cafes as well, is to develop a sell sheet. And this is a very specific format that would be generated for trying to gain new customers in the customers, not consumers. So a sell sheet is something that speaks to the customers that you're selling to the store owners, to the store managers, to the bakery owners, rather than speaking to the end consumer. So a sell sheet is just a one-page handout that summarizes the key features of your product. And so that would be emphasizing what those basic health benefits or nutritional aspects or features of your farm that you're most wanting to focus on. The sell sheet can suggest the placement in the store, the category that it might fit into. You would provide your pricing, a recommended retail pricing. Again, you can't require that a store sells your product for a certain price, but if you know the average markup and average margin for your particular category, you can give a recommended retail price so that store owners know what other stores are likely selling your product for. A sell sheet can also include a promotion schedule. So if you're expecting to offer a sale on your price on your product every 6 months or every second week or whatever it is that you're choosing to do, you can emphasize that on your sell sheet as well. The sell sheet would also have some really functional information that would help the store to enter your product into their data system. So the UPC code, the product size, what are the dimensions of the package, what's your case count? So are you selling in cases of 4 units in a case or 12 units in a case? Again, the suggested retail pricing, I guess I got that twice there. You'll also include your contact and your ordering information, how they go about placing orders, whether that's by phone or email, or if you have another system. If you have distributors that you work with, providing the information for distribution companies that they can be ordering through. And if you're doing deliveries on your own, then what the lead time on orders might be if you have a particular delivery schedule. If you're only coming to that retail location once every 3 months, that's certainly something that a store manager would need to know. Or if you're able to serve that store every once a week or twice a week, that's something that would be pertinent information to include on the sell sheet. They would also want to know if there's a minimum order size, or maybe there's a delivery charge. So maybe orders of 5 cases or less have a delivery charge of a certain fee. So these are some of the functional information pieces that you would include on a sell sheet. There's a really great document on the Manitoba Government Agriculture site on starting a small food business, and they have a PDF document there that outlines all the different elements that would be included on a sell sheet specifically for food products, and the link to that resource is included in the resource page that comes along with these modules. So that's just kind of a brief summary and an introduction to what a sell sheet could look like. Again, and then of course including some of your branding, your logo, some of your imagery to kind of continue the feel of your product as well, all worked into your sell sheet in a way that's really functional and gives the stores the information that they need to actually go ahead and make an order from you. So the last component of marketing in retail environments that I'm going to touch on is the topic of in-store sampling. This can be a really great way to bridge the gap between you and your end consumer without having to rely on all of the sales reps, delivery drivers, shelf stockers, category managers, and all those other team members or barriers to funnel your product information through. And certainly no matter how great of a team you've built with all of these different people, no one can be more enthusiastic about your product than you are. Demos are a fantastic way to get that enthusiasm straight to your customer. You get to talk to them, they sample your product, they might leave with a package in their hands that they can go home and try and tell all their friends about how much they found they found this great new product. They even got to talk to the owner or someone representing the company. But let's be honest, if you put the time into talking with customers all afternoon, it can feel like a much better idea to be selling your product at a farmer's market where you're keeping the full price of a product. You're sitting in a store all day and maybe you're selling a product at $8 or $10, but you're only keeping half of that money for yourself because the rest still gets funneled through the distributors and the retailers that are playing a role in selling that product because you're in that retail environment. So it's important, just as important as sharing your enthusiasm with the consumers, getting them to sample and hopefully purchase your product, is showing the store that you care about them as well. You're not just using their shelf space as a way to use their customers, you're helping to draw customers into their door and helping them to leave happy. Everyone loves munching on a sample when they push their cart through the aisles, and store managers generally will see your willingness to do demos in their store as proof that you're part of their team as well. There are exceptions. There are stores that only want demos at certain events or certain days, or they feel like demos and sampling just clogs up their space. But by and large, stores love having products sampled, and it can even be a leverage point to help get your product onto the shelf of a reluctant store by promising demos to help launch the product. So some functional aspects to keep in mind. Your samples need to be prepared in an inspected facility. So if you have a product that's a cracker that you've made from grains that you've grown on your farm, this is really easy. You open up your package, you give them a cracker, and you spread on some peanut butter. Peanut butter is generally not allowed in samples because of allergy concerns. You spread on a slice of cheese, as long as the cheese is kept refrigerated at the right temperature. But it does get more complicated when you're selling something like flour that then needs to get made into a ready-to-eat product. Those samples that you're providing to people must be prepared in an inspected facility. So you can't take the flour that you've milled in your inspected milling facility and then bake that into cookies in your own home. Generally, those samples will need to be prepared in a licensed bakery or kitchen of some sort. Similarly, the staff providing samples, depending on the location, either should or must have their Safe Food Handler certification. Some retailers will not allow sampling unless that certification is in place and that you have proof of it as well. And even if it's not required, it's probably a good idea to avoid some food handling mistakes. And then when you're doing a demo or sampling your product, it's also important to track the number of customers that you've talked to. Maybe at the end of the day, you've sold a pittance of product, but when you look back at your number, there's only 40 people walked through the store all afternoon, where compared to another location, that might actually be a higher percentage of customers actually purchasing the product compared to the number of customers walking through the door. You'll want to track which samples were given, how much product was sold. This can also help you to determine what the best days and times are. Sometimes the stores will suggest this. They'll suggest that Tuesdays are our best days because that's our senior discount day, but you might have a product that really appeals to millennials, so you might not want to be there on Tuesday senior discount day. This is all product specific, and the store managers may have suggestions, and it may be things that you just learn over experience, that people just won't purchase your product unless it's before noon or on Saturdays. And so this can help indicate future sales at that location and give you advice for future demos. Also keep track of whether or not there's a sales pricing being offered. It can help to offer a promotional pricing during the time that you're doing a sampling, just to give an extra nudge for people to actually make that purchase then, rather than waiting for the next time they walk in the store when they'll likely forget about you anyways. But keeping track of whether or not there was a sales offered at the same time is also important. And certainly ask about special days at the store. Sometimes there'll be renovations in the store, and they'll have a grand reopening or some type of seasonal feature, or they might have certain days throughout the year that they like to do demos and have events. So you certainly talk to the store about when they like sampling, if they like sampling, and how you can help to support the store by demoing your product in their location. So backing up a step, before your product is on a store shelf, you somehow need to capture the attention of the store manager. This can simply be walking through a Target store, finding a slow time of day when the manager isn't too likely to be running from spill on aisle 4 in between a broken cash register and a complaining customer at checkout till 9. Walking through the store and asking if the manager has a few moments to listen to your sales pitch. But a more formal way of going about this, and something that can potentially extend your reach, is to attend some trade shows. Now, trade shows usually have a specific focus. In addition to the geographic region that they're covering, perhaps your city or your province or your region, there will often be an additional focus for each specific trade show. This might be a focus on plant-based foods or sweets and snacks. Pet foods have their own specific trade show. Halal products have their own trade shows. Gluten-free trade shows, hotel restaurants, even some chains will set up trade shows specifically for the store managers for their chain locations to be introduced to new products. So choosing a trade show that fits the type of product that you're offering can be a really helpful way to grab a targeted audience for customers in the retail or the food service industry that you're interested in. So this can be helpful rather than just corralling them in the grocery aisle when there's 1,000 other things to do. So attending a trade show, there's a few things that certainly you need to be keeping in mind. It can be a really expensive proposition. So the booth fees for trade shows can range from potentially just a few $100s if it's a smaller regional show, up to several thousand, many $1,000s for some of the larger shows. And often the larger shows will be a larger geographic region, so you're likely traveling and providing for transportation costs for getting yourself and some staff and all of your demo material to that location as well. At the trade show, verbal communication skills are key. You can bypass some of the logistics. The sell sheets, you'll certainly have them with you, but they're less important. The sell sheets are something that people are going to take home with them to remind them of your product, but you get a chance to talk to people face to face. So if verbal communication is one of your strong suits, this can be a great way to bypass some of those logistics, the sell sheets and distributors and schedules that otherwise might get in between you and the store managers that you want to talk to. So actually setting up for a trade show, you would often set up similar to doing a demo. You'll want the roll-up or retractable banners or samples, potentially your sell sheets, business cards, any other type of promotional materials that you might have. If you have videos, photos, all these types of promotional materials that will help to grab people's attention and to explain well what your product features are. Similar to any type of marketing channel, it's important to make sure that you're ready for that marketing channel before you jump on it. So if you're going to a trade show that has a fairly large geographic reach, but you don't yet have distribution to cover that entire geographic reach, that's probably not the best effort suited to you because you're not ready for that jump yet. So certainly once you already have a few stores or a few buyers within a network and you're expanding that sales network, pushing at the edges of it, trade shows can work best for kind of expanding those networks rather than breaking into entirely new networks and trying to expand all at once. That can be fairly daunting. So at a trade show, you'd want to be providing samples of your packaged product as well as samples to consume on the spot, collecting business cards so that you can follow up with people, keeping data and tracking the names and the number of people that you've talked to and how people respond to you as well. There's some really excellent guides to help you to prepare for trade shows. So one is through Agriculture Canada. They have a step-by-step guide to successful trade show preparation, and there's the link to that in the notes page that accompanies the module here. And Manitoba also has a checklist for some of the considerations, the different things that you'll want to have in place before attending a trade show. But beyond that, beyond the functional, what to do and what to bring, making sure you have enough extension cords and comfortable shoes and enough product to sample. Certainly assessing all the different types of trade shows out there and making sure that you've chosen trade shows that are a good match for your product, whether that's the geographic region, and certainly the focus of that trade show is extremely important because they are a fairly big investment in time and energy and money before you attend a trade show. But they can be a great opportunity for expanding to new customers. Another marketing tool that is particularly relevant for working with retailers, but potentially also with direct-to-consumer sales, is the option of offering promotional or sales pricing on your product. This is likely not particularly useful with food service, except for perhaps free or greatly reduced pricing for introductory orders to encourage new venues to give your product a try and to experiment with it. But once a food service location has your product on the menu, fluctuations in pricing usually won't be significant enough for them to change menu pricing, which could in turn influence the number of consumers who are purchasing it. But in reality, fluctuations in pricing probably won't be noticed at that level. Price promos, though, can be a really powerful tool to drive sales with retail and direct marketing, particularly in certain circumstances. This might be when you're introducing a new product or a variation of a product, a new size or a new flavor. If you're working with a new retailer, that can also be a fantastic way to help draw attention to your product in that new location or in combination with a demo. But be selective. Choose a reason for having sales pricing and then evaluate whether it was effective for that particular goal. If you've worked out your pricing close to the margin, offering a sales can certainly undermine your overall pricing strategy. If it's really easy for you to be offering a sales price, you might have too much margin worked in and you might be pricing yourself out of business anyways. So be careful with it. With direct marketing, social media certainly offers some unique ways to offer sales, either giveaways or coupons for individuals who help spread the word about your product to all of their friends and contacts. But even in retail, it's not your only option. Isn't just to say 20% off for this week or that month. You can also set up pricing schemes that would create bulk buying incentives or promotions for purchasing one of each variety. And schemes like this can be helpful for convincing your regular customers to try out some of your new products. But sales pricing can also come with some potential pitfalls. With an effective sale, purchases will peak during the sales period, but depending on the product and its shelf life, sales can then plummet to almost nothing after the sales period. This could be used strategically. For example, you could run a sale in February, March to clear your workload during spring planting, but it can also give you a false sense of success, followed by very low sales. You certainly don't want to be undermining your actual pricing, and you don't want consumers to be expecting a sale price because they'll be holding off on purchasing your product because they're waiting for the next sale. So there's certainly some factors to consider when you're choosing when and where and how. In general, sales pricing would have to be coordinated in advance, particularly when you're working with larger retailers. Sometimes it's necessary to plan promotions a full year in advance. Coupons may be possible in certain stores, but not likely with some of the larger retailers that have complex and centrally coordinated pricing and inventory systems. Also consider which retailers have in-store flyers and whether a sale can be featured in one of those flyers. There may be an additional charge for this, or it may be covered by the retailer depending on the particular store. So certainly some different options. Again, in the retail environment, they certainly need to be planned out and you have more restrictions. With direct marketing, of course, you can choose to offer a sale at any moment that you want, but do consider that it's not always the best option. You might be tricking yourself into success and training your customers into bad habits as well. So in-store flyers are certainly one aspect and a fairly traditional aspect of print media, but it's worth discussing some of the other options out there as well. Print media or other traditional forms like newspapers, magazines, radio, these can all be divided into either paid or earned content. Now, paid content is the advertising that you've created and you're paying to present to people. This can be purchasing banner or ad space, the back of a city bench, a radio ad, which can be fairly popular actually in rural areas and small towns, creating posters or billboards, or mail-outs and coupons. I personally haven't had great luck or any success whatsoever with paid content, except for in the context of perhaps sometimes paying for Google or Facebook ads. But that's not to say that that paid content doesn't work. There's still piles of money poured into traditional advertising, so there must be some payback. Early on in my own business, a small retailer in our area took out a full-page color ad in a local magazine, and nearly a third of that page they dedicated to our farm and our products. We helped to pay some of the printing costs, and it was partnered with the coupon for our products that could be used only at that retail location. I think it cost nearly $800 between myself and the retailer for that ad space, and in the end, 7 people used the coupon. So I paid over $100 for each of those people to try out my product at $2 off the regular cost. I would have been better off shouting on a street corner and throwing packages of oats out the back of my farm truck. On the flip side, earned media attention is pretty hard to beat. This is when a newspaper or a media channel, a radio host or a local magazine takes a genuine interest in what you're doing, and they decide to reach out to you to be able to share your story with their viewers. Small town papers, farm papers, although they have a more limited reach, can be an amazing platform to get started, and the news cycles in small towns are certainly a little bit easier to break into. In so much of marketing, though, it's difficult to predict and to strong arm anything into happening. If you have a new product, or if you've broken into a new market, you could send out a press release letting your local papers know about this new event. But the success rate of a press release that seems salesy to actually turn into a story that reporters are following up on is pretty low. And you can't choose your timing either. A reporter who catches wind of something new that you're doing isn't going to ask what day or week works best for you to have something published. We had the biggest mainstream newspaper in our nearest city run a full-page story with 3 or 4 color photos about a direct marketing initiative that we were doing a few years ago. But the story ran just one day before our deadline for consumers to sign up for our CSA. I won't complain. It was still a great boost to our sales, but we sure would have appreciated it if it were a week earlier. Social media can actually be one of the most effective ways to catch the attention of media. If you're posting regularly about what's happening on your farm and there's some detail or event that really grabs people's attention, sometimes they'll forward that on to people they know, as happens with social media, and they forward it on to someone else who they know, and that person forwards it on to someone else who works in traditional media. In that way, your farm events can catch the news cycle in a fairly organic way, but you need people to care in the first place so that the story can start circulating. Your abilities as a storyteller, a photographer, a videographer will certainly have an impact in this way. And we'll talk more about some of the social media platforms over the next few minutes. So I'm going to jump now to focus on the marketing efforts that are targeted most specifically to your consumers, the end users of your product, not the sell sheets for retailers or the trade shows for corporate buyers, but the ways that you can speak directly to your consumers. And this is vitally important, whether you're selling through distribution networks, selling to retailers, or whether your main sales channel is farmers market or farm gate sales, whether you're selling direct to consumer or you're selling to a consumer through other channels. Certainly the most powerful tool out there to speak directly to your consumers is through the internet, where consumers can find information about you 24/7, and they can also get in touch with any questions or concerns that they may have. Online presence can be categorized into 3 broad categories, and each serves a slightly different purpose. Developing a website can provide functional but usually static information. It's not something that will be changed or updated all that often. Social media channels are certainly ideal for providing time-sensitive but less formal information. The internet can also be a powerful way of facilitating your consumers to generate their own content about your product and share that with their friends as well. Products that don't have a website can be perceived as being too small and obscure to even be a legitimate product. Products or brands that have a website but don't have social media presence can feel out of touch or aloof or static. Also, the type of social media will change as well, whether you're trying to gear your product marketing towards, to millennials or to an older or younger generation. Certainly the social media channel that you choose can have a significant impact on who you're reaching. And then if your marketing efforts funneled into your website or through your social media platforms are successful in reaching and appealing to the right customers, that content can take on a life of its own through consumer-generated content. This can be as formal as someone leaving you a review on Google or on Facebook, or mentioning your product on a thread on Reddit, or through likes and shares and comments. Of course, internet marketing mirrors marketing in the real world, except that a permanent footprint is left behind. If someone tries out your product and then they tell their friend about it when they're chatting together in the park, that conversation can be forgotten entirely. If that same conversation takes place through comments left on Reddit, that will be available for other people to read for weeks, months, years, decades. If the local paper runs a story on your product, those papers will be recycled or discarded after a few weeks. But if someone leaves a review on Google, that review can be read by other potential customers far into the future. So the immediacy of being able to get online content out to people within minutes of it happening, but also the timelessness of that content once it's out there, the inability to erase things. This really can offer some distinct advantages and some unique considerations as well from a marketing perspective. So before we dive into the details of developing a website or e-commerce platform, it's worth taking some time to consider the channels that you're going to be wanting to use for your direct-to-consumer marketing, if that's going to be one aspect of your sales plan. If you're marketing into retail or to food service, your website can be quite basic without e-commerce platforms or anything too fancy. If you're primarily relying on farmers markets as well, social media might be much more important in order to draw people to those markets and to give them a heads up on what's available and to give them up-to-the-minute updates. However, if you're going to be offering home delivery or central pickup or on-farm pickups, potentially, then a polished and fully customized e-commerce platform integrated into your website will likely be essential. In addition to your own website, this could be used instead of or in addition to. There are also some newer e-commerce platforms that help to facilitate online ordering specifically for farmers. These are platforms like LocalLine, I believe localline.ca, it's an Ontario company, or eatfromfarms.com, I don't know where they're from. And they have pre-made templates for you to add your products, and it helps to streamline the ordering and payment processes, even sorts your orders into different delivery methods, delivery days, creates routes for your deliveries, and generates pick lists for you to prepare your orders. Not all regions have active platforms in use, but when they are, it really facilitates consumer ordering because customers can jump from one locally produced product to the other without leaving that website. And so if there's someone who's interested in local pork, they might then browse and find out, oh, there's someone doing local grain as well, and they might be a good consumer for you to be able to grab their attention. What payment options you're going to be taking, it's also worth considering. For small purchases of $5 or $10 or $20, credit cards can certainly offer the most convenience to consumers, but depending on the platform that you're using and the size of the purchase, it can cost up to 6% of your transaction. So for a larger order, you might be paying the credit card company $10 or $15, and that might be worth it to try to wrestle your customers into sending e-transfers or just using the old school checks or cash instead. So then I have some of the different marketing channels here kind of divided in my own approximation of consumer convenience from the least convenient or most convenient to the least. And often this is directly the opposite of the producer's convenience, usually having to do with how much transportation the producer or the consumer has to do. So home delivery is certainly going to offer your consumer the greatest convenience, but requires the greatest amount of time and energy from yourself. Your proximity to your consumers is important, so how far you need to travel to get them, although it is possible to set up home deliveries on a fairly infrequent schedule, maybe every second week or every month, and if you have dedicated customers, they might be okay with that. Charging a fee for home deliveries might turn off some customers, but it can be valuable if it can help to pay for your time, and also to help encourage people to order less regularly, larger orders, and perhaps pool their orders together with some neighbors and friends and help spread the word that way because they want to decrease their delivery fee. Farmers markets are certainly the most traditional way of direct marketing, and consumers will often value the experience of going to a market, seeing a variety of products from different farmers, and they can act as really great community events. And this may work well for you depending on the predictability of your schedule, the timing of the markets, and your proximity. But for some producers, being locked into a certain time and place can be almost impossibly unmanageable. So that really depends on your own context and your own situation. Central pickup locations can offer some of the convenience of advance ordering. You know what items have already been ordered. You don't need to fill your truck with product that you'll have to backhaul at the end of the day. So you know what you need to bring with you, and it places the burden of travel back onto the consumer. So a dedicated customer might be just happy with this, but a new customer or someone who's hesitant to put effort into a new product, or for smaller purchases, this may be just too prohibitive. On-farm pickups or a farm store eliminates the transportation requirement on your end, but it certainly increases the infrastructure requirements, and customers stopping by might offset that convenience depending on your own personal schedule and some of the particulars of your farm situation. It's also very location dependent, but certainly can work well for farms located close to an urban center, give consumers kind of a closer connection to where their food is from and help to build a really dedicated consumer base. And it may also present further opportunities for farm tourism or farm experiences if that's something that would be valuable to your farm as well. So as you're developing an online presence, probably the most logical place to start is with designing a website that will present and get information to consumers about your product. So a website is best suited for providing static information about your product, things that aren't likely to change over time. If you offer a sale on your product, you're likely not even going to mention that on your website. Your website is most likely going to be for information that doesn't change, and so it can be fairly consistent week to week and even year to year. You do want to include the basic selling features of your product, your nutritional information, your allergy information, farm background, photos, recipes, testimonials, and certainly contact information encouraging people to get in touch with you directly with any questions that they might have. And your website, although it may be targeted for your end consumer, also keep in mind that it will likely be viewed, although maybe not extensively, by retailers, distributors, restaurants, and other buyers. So in actually designing a website, there's a couple different options to use. One is to jump in with the DIY version and build your own website from the ground up. This is fairly easy to do. There are some more complex versions. You can build a website using WordPress, which allows you a large degree of flexibility, lots of different designs and functions and separate features that can be added, different plugins that can customize your website to make it quite unique and different. But it's also a little bit more complicated to use. There are simpler drag and drop builders with pre-designed templates where you're just plunking in your logo, your photos, your text, and putting that into pre-designed formats. And those types of drag and drop builders are available through website hosting platforms like Wix, Squarespace, Shopify, and those are quite attainable, usually ranging between about $15 a month up to maybe $50 a month. And so that would be kind of an all-inclusive. You have the building function of actually designing and building the website, as well as the hosting space, so the URL that someone will navigate to. And so that can be a fairly quick and simple way to get started. But it's certainly also an option to hire someone else to build and design a website for you. Certainly it's very similar to working with any graphic designer. You want to be choosing someone whose style reflects the type of feel that you want with your own product and your brand. And hiring someone to build or design a website, a fairly middle of the road estimate would be about $5,000 for developing a website. But there's also ongoing maintenance costs associated with that. Not only every time you want to change something, if you've developed a new product and you need to add a new page about it, or you've got a new recipe that you think people should try and you want to have that available on your website, those are all going to be places where you need to reach out to your website designer and ask them to do more work for you. And there'll also be ongoing maintenance to make sure that your site is stable, that it's not being hacked or crashed, that plugins are up to date and everything's working well. So there will be ongoing, monthly or annual maintenance costs for keeping a website going. And the less control you had in actually developing the website, the less control you'll have in keeping it up to date. And so there is much more of a chance that your website will become static or obsolete if there's more barriers between your ability to edit that website. Certainly your website is a great opportunity to highlight photographs, videography, podcasts, interviews, any type of print media features that you may have, and to focus on consumer content as well, so any reviews that they might have. And a website can also be a really powerful platform for online sales as well. And so if you're using something like WordPress, then WooCommerce is a great platform for setting up a store on site with lots of different options for customers to either have product. You can add in plugins to have shipping quotes automatically generated through Canada Post or through other shippers, or giving options for home delivery, for on-store, on-farm pickup, or however the sales channel is that you want to do. Even having consumers pre-order products for farmers market sales can all be easily facilitated with an online sales store. There is a micro grant available for this, the Canada Digital Adoption Program. For setting up e-commerce, there is a $2,400 micro grant, and I can't remember the deadline for that one, but that is currently available, and the link to that program is in the resource page alongside. So with website design, certainly a fantastic way to start getting your product out there, gets your product a professional and polished feel, and is something that can be developed and updated or changed, not as often as some of the other social media platforms. So a great way to get product out there to your consumers. Once you have a website developed, the next avenue for online presence is to pursue some social media channels. So social media is probably the word of mouth of our generation, and it's certainly the simplest way to reach people directly in a one-on-one type of format. Each different social media channel has some different advantages and disadvantages, and so you may not want to use all of them, and you may find that certain channels make more sense for your product or for your target consumer. Facebook, I think, still tops the chart as being the most used platform, although certainly starting to veer towards an older demographic. Instagram is following up closely behind, and YouTube as well. If you have any type of video content, if you're doing explainer videos or tours of the farm or recipe preparation, this can be a fantastic way to reach people through that video channel. TikTok can also be used for marketing. Um, Twitter, even reaching out to consumers directly through Snapchat as well is getting more common through WhatsApp as well. And so some different social media channels that can be used there. I would say one of the traps with social media, though, is it can be really easy to connect with people, and it can be much more difficult to translate that into sales. You can find yourself engaging in long, drawn-out conversations, debates, or discussions with people who will never walk into a store and see your product. They may not even be in the same geographic region as you. And yet, the social media rabbit trails that we get into means that we can spend a lot of time engaging in things so we'll never really have any intention of interacting with in the real world. And so making that jump between the online world and the real world, I think, can be a bit of a trap with social media as well. And so you do need to be careful about not focusing too much of your attention on how many likes and comments and shares you get on social media posts compared with how functional is that information, and is that actually translating to the sales and the consumer interest that you actually need. So with social media, you can build individual rapport, and this is again something that you as a farm to consumer company have a huge advantage to, being able to show people what that whole journey looks like, all the way from planting your crop to harvesting, all the different steps along the way with processing. If you're able to share this information in a way that is timely, today we were planting our crop, today we packaged this batch of product that's hitting store shelves next week. And in doing that in a way that aligns with your consumers' values, so you're targeting the right people for your product. And it's also a really great way to show your authenticity, that you are a real person driving the product that you're bringing to the store shelves. Today it's a itchy, terrible day as we cleaned out the screenings from this thing. The social media can be not necessarily everything has to be polished and perfect looking. There's real value to people knowing that there are real faces and real people behind the products, and they can certainly help to create really loyal followings in your customers. With social media as well, it does facilitate and make it easier for customers to share about your product with their friends or their contacts. If they're using your product in their home, they might think, oh, wow, this is a really great recipe. I should really mention it to my mom the next time I talk to her. But if that conversation ever happens, it's yet to be seen. With social media, it's really easy to click that share button and immediately share the information about your product with that person that they think it might be most interested in. So it does make it very easy for people to start spreading your information to the people around them as well. And then another really powerful tool on social media is directing potential customers back to your website e-commerce platforms. Again, they're already kind of a target audience. They're already looking at the screen, and if you can just get them to click onto your website store, they have the ability to actually purchase right then and there when they're already feeling an emotional attachment and connection to you and to your product. And so if social media is integrated into direct action where people are able to make purchasing decisions, that can have more tangible impact than a social media post that maybe tells people about a store that's carrying your product, but that might not actually be able to translate into action from the people who are viewing that post for days or weeks or ever. So certainly social media can be a fantastic way of grabbing people, translating social media into direct action is certainly the challenge and the opportunity with finding consumers in a social media platform. So not specific just to social media or even to online marketing specifically. This can be relevant to all types of marketing material that you develop. It can be really helpful to always consider blending together functional and emotional content when you're developing different types of material. So the functional content would be the information that consumers are going to need to actually make purchasing and food preparation decisions. And the emotional content is that additional information that gives consumers a reason to care about you and to care about your product. And so some of the functional content that you may want to be relaying to your consumers is some of your product specifications. Is this product helpful for people with a certain allergy? Is there particular ingredients that you're really proud of? Are there special features of it? Education around organic crop management and whether or not consumers should be diving deeper into their pocketbook to purchase organic products. The nutritional information about your product, any types of changes that you're making, product uses, recipes that can support using your product, upcoming sales pricings, and then just the functionality of where and how to buy your product, directing to consumers to the stores that are carrying your product, the restaurants that are using it, the markets that you'll be selling at, or to your website store. But the emotional content that will help to make that functional content more appealing to people and give them a reason to actually want to read that information is those emotional contents. So things like photos of your product all the way through from soil preparation and seeding through to harvest and processing, some of the day in the life of a farm information, introducing your consumers to yourself or to any other family farm members that you may be comfortable sharing about, giving consumers those personal touches that will help them to get a sense of who you are, what your farm is like, and whether or not they should be caring about your product or not. And then pictures of the end product, along with, this is what I had for lunch, and this is this great way that I use this product. And by the way, here's how you can find all the different recipes for using it, or here's the nearest store that might be carrying it for you. So giving this not only gives you a reason to reach out to people, it doesn't feel quite as salesy if you're just saying, I've got this upcoming sale, buy. But if you can say, here's a photo of what I've been up to today, and also here's a great hint, a clue on a sale that's coming up. And so it can make it easier for you to market your product if you're blending these two types of contents together. And it certainly makes it more attractive for consumers to be engaging in and listening to the marketing material that you're presenting them with. So to be honest, direct marketing can be a really tough slog. There are significant deficiencies in the concept of a mega brand sold in a box store, and most consumers don't have the time or energy or ambition to source out or order each item from their pantry directly. The larger and more significant the item, the more likely consumers are to invest time in finding it. This is perhaps where farmers selling a side of pork or a quarter of a beef cow have a leg up on us grain folks. Grain certainly gets overlooked when people think about local food. But adding collaboration in your marketing can not only add potential efficiencies, giving consumers a one-stop shop for local products, but is also a break from the conventional competition model, which pits one producer against the other, everyone vying for the attention of their consumers. Collaborative marketing can be as simple as sharing about other producers' products through your social media platforms in exchange for them doing the same, or as complex as sharing transportation and pickup depots, or even co-developing some of your online sales platforms. Where there's significant overlapping products, if you and your neighbor are growing and processing the same product, this can certainly be difficult, but potentially also an opportunity to work together to differentiate your products in meaningful ways so that you're not competing with the farmers that you have the most in common with. The advantages to this are more than just functional. They help to build connections between farmers and to build community between those farmers and the consumers. So some examples of different collaborative marketing channels would be a food hub. Functionally, this can be kind of similar to a farmer's market, minus the in-person component. Food hubs usually offer some type of online ordering platform, and then often pool together the delivery and warehousing of products. so that consumers, and often not individuals as much as institutions and corporate buyers, are able to make fairly efficient purchases of a variety of different products from the same platform and warehouse. So if you can investigate whether your area has an active or developing food hub that pools together products from local producers, that can certainly help to streamline some of your marketing and distribution efforts. Another collaborative marketing channel would be a value chain partnership. And so this is where producers work specifically with and for an end user to grow the products that they need. In this model, a restaurant or a retail outlet or an institution or a housing co-op or some other buyer has some kind of investment, maybe not capital, but maybe a purchasing agreement in all stages of food production. A restaurant will benefit by having a story to tell their customers, and will also have a say in some of the production approaches, the varieties and quantities, and some of the decision making that you make in your farming. With the CSA model, you can pursue partnerships with other farmers, perhaps adding your grains to a neighbor's vegetable CSA box, or pooling together the products from a variety of synergistic products to sell together. My main product is oats, and I was finding direct marketing extremely difficult. I would sit at a farmer's market and sell barely more product than a single retail store could sell in that same day, with the product just sitting on the shelf and I didn't have to be there. I could sell my product in 40 or 50 retail stores, but it was a struggle for me with my workload to find time to attend even one farmer's market a week. But after a few years, I developed a grain bundle CSA that pools together about 20 different types of grains, seeds, flours, pulses, and oils from another number of other farmers and on-farm processors around the province. And as a result of this, direct marketing has become a far more significant component of our sales, rivaling and some years even exceeding the product that we sell in retail stores across the province. That's a huge change from the farmers markets days. Some other grain CSA models that I've seen across Canada and the US, there aren't many of them, but there's a few. Some of these CSAs will offer a certain weight of product every year. So if you purchase a grain CSA, you know that you'll get 50 pounds of flour, flakes, seeds, and grains, depending on what crops were or weren't successful in that given year. And that gives you some opportunities to test out some different heritage grains, maybe some new crops you haven't tried before, or some unique varieties that you're less certain of, as long as you have a few things that are planted that you can kind of bank on being able to give the consumers at the end of the year. So I think that's reaching the end of what I have to say about marketing your grain crops. Hopefully these tools will be things that you can draw upon and give you a few ideas to bounce around with your own product. With farming, there's a fair degree of uncertainty in growing a crop. You can do absolutely everything right. You can prep your fields, have amazing soil structure and nutrients, plant at the optimal time, have low weed pressure, but if the sky doesn't cooperate, there's really nothing that can be done. With food production, the parts that you can control are the product itself, the processing side of things to make sure that your end product is as good as possible. But marketing has a role to play as well in getting information about your product out to people. The sales numbers may not always seem to make sense, and it can feel a bit like watching where the wind is blowing or shaking your fist at the rain clouds. But the more tools you have in marketing, the greater the variety of ideas that you can try, and the better your chance of success. So all the best to you and the incredible food that you're growing, processing, and bringing to your consumers' kitchens.